What is up, everybody? Welcome to the final Saturday morning college football show of the regular season. We've got conference championship week upon us, so not the volume of games that we usually have, but still a really fun slate, really fun college football landscape to talk about. The change in the playoff format has really shifted the discussion around this week. Saw an exciting win from Boise State last night, and just fun to have these games kind of mean something. We've got a few of those today as well. So we'll break that down, of course, with a primary focus on the DFS aspect of it, but fun college football nonetheless. And to help do that, you've got myself, Justin Van Zuiden, STL Cardinals 84, the daily fantasy handle, and John Laub alongside as usual. John, how you doing?
I'm doing great. And I have two questions, Justin, that I've been thinking about all morning. One, are you voting for Ashton Jeanty or Travis Hunter if you had a Heisman vote? And two, does Army deserve a legitimate shot at the playoffs considering their real smashing victory over Tulane last night? They are 11-1, losing only to Notre Dame. What do you think?
Yeah, so if I've got a Heisman vote, it's going to Jeanty. Okay. You know, it just look, Travis Hunter's great. You know, fantastic athlete. But if you look at Colorado, basically ran a marketing campaign around him, right? It's Dion, and, you know, they had him score that one touchdown on a double reverse late in a game that was like, you know, they were ahead by 20 against Utah, and basically, you know, force fed him touchdowns and production. And, you know, he had a fluke interception on a tip ball in that game, and everyone was saying his Heisman stock went way up. That was the week his odds went way up. And his production was basically a double reverse schemed for him for a touchdown with a minute left and a meaningless, you know, possession and an interception that was on a tip ball that wasn't even in his direction. So, and, you know, it just, you look at what Ashton Jeanty's done basically every week, and everyone says, well, he plays in the Mountain West, and, you know, it's a terrible conference. The dude ran for 192 yards and 3 touchdowns against the team that's currently favored to win the national championship in Oregon. And the guys run for 125 yards, 125 plus yards in every single game this season. I mean, it doesn't matter what the competition is. You did it against Oregon. You did it against a very good UNLV team twice. You know, Hunter's going to win. I'm not questioning that, but I think that Jeanty should have a better shot than he really does.
I will admit, 2 weeks ago, I would have voted for Hunter. But, Justin, when I've been watching the game last night, looking at these historical numbers, if I had a vote, I now agree with you. And what I ask myself is, could Boise State have Travis Hunter and win the Mountain West? I don't think so. Would Colorado win the Big 12 with Ashton Jeanty? I do think they would win the Big 12. So I've switched my vote in the last 48 hours.
Yeah, I mean, the guy has 29 rushing touchdowns and 2,500 yards, the most yards in a season outside of Barry Sanders. So that's pretty good company, if you ask me. And yeah, again, I'm not going to, you know, I don't think it's a crime if Hunter wins by any means. But if I had a vote, I'd give it to Jeanty. I do not have a vote, so my statement really doesn't matter. Now, as for Army, this is a tougher case for me. I mean, I think you could sway me either way, but their schedule was fairly weak. Their one big test against Notre Dame, they got blitzed and really weren't competitive. You know, and then people come back and say, well, Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. And again, I'm a Northern Illinois alum, so I'm biased there, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, they are 11-1. Like, I've been banging the drum for a month now that the 3-loss SEC teams shouldn't get in. But if we're being realistic, I think all of those 3-loss SEC teams would probably beat Army, though it would be fun to watch. I mean, Army didn't throw a pass in the first half last night. They didn't commit a penalty in the whole game. It's disciplined football. So, yeah, I think they deserve a spot, but I don't have any fault with them being left out. It's tough. It just the thing that bugs me is the SEC thinking that they should have like 6 teams in, and Lane Kiffin's going on and on about how Ole Miss should be in. They lost to Kentucky. I mean, you lost to Kentucky. That was their only conference win. Get out of here. You lost 3 games. You lost to Kentucky. I mean, it's just, when does it end? And somebody said, well, the solution is to expand the playoff to 24 teams. But then, then LSU would be complaining that they're not in. So, I don't know. What's your stance on Army?
I do not think there should be 4 SEC teams in. And I don't think we should have 4 Big Ten teams in. So if we put 6 in there, right, I think that's pretty fair for the most part. Then I think Army should have a legitimate shot at number 12. I think they're going to be like number 13 or 14. But if we're going based on meritocracy, and they did finish 11-1, they can only play the schedule in front of them. And I agree, they are a disciplined football team. Now, do I think they could go and beat Ohio State? I don't think so. But could they be competitive in a first-round game? I do think Army can. I think they've earned it. So I have to see who wins today. I know that might be a cop-out, but I do think some games matter today. But I have them at number 13 or 14, and I think they should be in the discussion.
Yeah, so, if you look right now, I think Miami is the number 12 team, but they're not going to get in because the Big 12 champ is guaranteed in, so they're going to bounce Miami. And then the other kind of lingering question is, what happens if SMU loses? If SMU loses today, right now, the 11 spot, which will become the 12 spot because of the Big 12 champ, is Alabama. And so the question is, if SMU loses, should SMU get in? Should Alabama get in? I promise you, if SMU loses, SMU is not getting in the playoff and Alabama is getting in the playoff. That is going to happen.
I agree.
Again, I've been ranting against the SEC for a month now. I think SMU should be in regardless. Right now, that the committee has SMU like 3 or 4 spots above Alabama. Somebody said SMU should just forfeit the game, and then, that's lunacy. That's not going to happen. And then, the committee had them ahead of Alabama, but you're kidding yourself if you think SMU is going to lose and is going to get in over Alabama. It 100% is not going to happen. So the best juice I found on it this morning was like minus 350 for Alabama to make the playoff. That's free money, in my opinion. Alabama's getting in no matter what. SMU is not getting in over Alabama if they lose. Army is not getting in over Alabama. It's just not going to happen. And money talks and Alabama and ratings and all that. So that's all I'm going to do for the soapbox today. But if SMU loses, do you think they deserve to be in?
I do think they deserve, and I'm very hopeful. I don't want Clemson in. I know that sounds terrible, right? I don't think Clemson's that good, honestly. I do think SMU's a better football team than Clemson, if you've watched both teams all year. So I'm kind of hoping Clemson wins. Then it might come down to Army and Alabama. And I think, Justin, we have to think about Iowa State, Arizona State. What if Iowa State wins here? Does that automatically make Arizona State out? I think it kind of does, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's no way 2 teams from the Big 12 are getting in.
2 aren't getting in, right? So, but what if, and if Arizona State, there's no way Iowa, you're right, they're not going to get in. So it kind of comes down to Army and Alabama, and unfortunately, they're going to take Alabama for the television ratings. They're not going to take Army.
Yeah. Alabama's in. It's going to happen. If they're not in, I'll be pleasantly surprised, but I'll lose my minus 350 bet that I put on it. But usually don't bet anything with that much juice, but it's going to happen. Alabama's going to be in one way or the other. They'll find a way. They'll drag them in there. Somebody in the YouTube chat, Alvin, said South Carolina should be in. I think South Carolina has a better case than Ole Miss for sure. They're not going to get in, but I do think that they have a better case than Ole Miss. So, all right, I don't want to spend the whole hour. It's not going to take us as long to break down the games. There's only 6, so this probably won't go the full hour anyway, but I wanted to spend about 10 minutes just talking about the scenario. So Iowa State, Arizona State, winner is in, loser's probably out. Clemson and SMU, winner is in, loser is possibly out, unless if it's SMU, maybe they've still got a small chance. I don't think so. Penn State and Oregon is the marquee game tonight. Both of those teams are in. They're kind of playing for seeding. Georgia and Texas, probably same thing there. And then we've got the two lower conference championship games, Ohio and Miami of Ohio, and Marshall and Louisiana. So those are a couple teams that we maybe haven't seen on a main slate all year. Maybe once at most against, and that would have been when they were playing a higher powered school. So a couple of teams that, 4 teams that we haven't really seen all that much. There's some value on those teams, and people aren't probably as familiar with the names on those teams. So I think it's interesting to talk about how we're going to attack those squads today. Just in general, a thought on those 4 teams. Do you have interest there? And maybe guys that the field won't know quite as much.
Oh, I definitely think there's value at this level for, you and I really enjoy watching. So we tend to get value at the G5 level. So I do like Ohio. Now, if you haven't seen Ohio, they have this quarterback, Parker Navarro, man. He's okay throwing the football, but he is uber dynamic with his legs. So he's definitely in the consideration, no doubt about it. Miami of Ohio, I like their running game very much. We'll talk about one of their running backs that I'm interested in. And I do believe that between Marshall and Louisiana, you need at least one, if not 2 pieces of that game. I believe it's the highest over-under, right? 57.5. And neither team, Justin, is very good against the run. Braylon Baxton is the quarterback at Marshall. Super dynamic with his legs, but he's wildly inconsistent. He has outcomes of less than 15, but he could score over 30. So that's an interesting player there, a quarterback. Now, Louisiana has switched quarterbacks, which I'm going to probably stay away from. I'll go attack Louisiana in the ground game. We'll talk about some players there.
All right. With that, let's go ahead and dig into it. And I think the quarterback position this week is pretty unique in that it doesn't necessarily have a gotta have it, I think, top end guy that, you absolutely have to jam into your lineups. Like you got Klubnik up there, you got Dylan Gabriel up there, and those guys are solid. But do you absolutely need to spend, top dollar going after one of those guys today? I don't know. That's an interesting question that we got to answer on this slate. So let's start there with maybe the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks on the slate. Are you starting with one of them? How are you handling the top end at QB today?
My favorite one is Cade Klubnik. Now, I understand for salary, what's he, 9K? He's 9K. People might stay away from him, but I like him because of his upside with his legs. Look at these last 3 games, 62 yards rushing, 34 yards rushing, 41 yards rushing, and 3 touchdowns. And this is strange. If you've been watching Clemson, what has happened to Phil Maffa? He's basically disappeared, right, Justin? He's been bad in fantasy. They've gone away from him. He hasn't been productive. So I do like Cade Klubnik. He can throw the football, obviously, with 29 touchdown passes, only 5 interceptions. He's my favorite. I'm going to, you make decisions in DFS. I don't love Dylan Gabriel against Penn State. I know Oregon's dynamic, but if there's one thing I can say about James Franklin is he's boring. He's going to grind this game down. He's going to try to limit the offensive possessions for the Ducks. I don't know if Gabriel can score 30, 35. I
think you got stuck there, John, for a sec. So you're back.
Oh,
every time I hop in and make a funny face, John comes back in.
I was out for a second.
Just for 10 seconds, maybe.
Oh, sorry about that. So Dylan Gabriel, I worry about his ultimate ceiling because I do think the Penn State defense is good. So, but he's low ownership, so I do think he's a GPP viable, but not in cash games. I think the X factor. Do you believe in Park?
Yeah, it's Navarro is the interesting case here because again, he's the name that not as many people know. Ohio is not projected for a huge, volume of points today. I think that game only has a 44-point total. So, Navarro, we've got his ownership reasonably high. It's around 20, but again, only a 6-game slate here today. So Klubnik is my first choice here. And I think game flow, if you think Clemson's going to be trailing in that game, you can go with Klubnik. You can pair him with Brashard Smith and hope that SMU gets out to a lead. But that's kind of your feeling on how game flow is going to go there. But don't mind Navarro. I've only got Gabriel, I think, right now in one lineup. But I don't think you absolutely have to go top tier at quarterback. You can go down into the middle range, which frees up a little bit more salary. So you've got guys like in the 7Ks. Braxton for Marshall is going to be maybe the most popular quarterback on the slate, with that game having a high total. Levitt for Arizona State. I don't love as much today. Jordan Tyson is out. That's one of there's no major injury news to monitor on the slate. And Tyson, we already know, is out. So I'd prefer to go with the running game for Arizona State. You got Rocco Becht for Iowa State on the other side of that game. And then Kevin Jennings for SMU at 6.9K. Is probably the other guy that we would consider as part of that mid-range. I know you're generally a fan of Jennings with his dual threat ability. Who are you liking in that middle tier? Yeah, I think John's a little stuck here, so maybe he'll hop out and hop back
John,
in.
Maybe try a hop out and hop back in. See if there's a few tabs you can close because it keeps switching into frozen mode. So we'll get you to hop back out, hop back in. In the meantime, who do you like in that range, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jennings is the clear play. We've got him projected at 22 fantasy points. SMU probably needs to win to make the playoff. And at that salary with his dual threat ability, gives you a reasonable floor, gives you a good ceiling as well. I like Braxton, but if he's going to be double the ownership, I'll take Jennings for, similar projection. And what I think is a higher floor. So give me Jennings in that range. Becht would be my GPP guy. Iowa State, we know their passing game, they've got 2 clear-cut top pass catching targets, so he's easy to pair with a receiver. So I would rank them Jennings 1, Braxton 2, but I'll probably be underweight because of the ownership, and Becht 3 in terms of those mid-range quarterbacks today.
That makes me feel good because I was just in the midst of putting in a Becht tournament team with a Levitt, Scatabo, and Becht in his receivers stack.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense today. That game, while it doesn't have the highest total, I mean, 50 is not bad, kind of in the middle of where this slate falls. And I think that game could turn into somewhat of a sneaky shootout. So don't mind going there with Becht, and particularly if you think Arizona State's going to play with a lead in that game, and Scatabo, and there's certainly a lot of value at the receiver position. All right, John, hopefully we're good here.
I'm sorry, everyone. I don't know what happened from my end.
No, you're good. Those mid-range quarterbacks, who are you looking at today? The internet hates John today.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry, everyone. I don't know what's going on with I swear to God, I didn't do anything today at all. I'm on the same, I think I am. So Fields is very interesting. I had mentioned
Shoot, it may have to be the TJ and Justin show.
Oh no.
John's being
oh my God, I apologize more than anything. I don't understand why this is happening. I do like Fields, and I think Beck is a nice GPP option. If you are coming back with Beck.
DFS Kraken says John ran out of AOL minutes.
Yeah, unfortunately, we'll have to switch it to us too. We'll see if maybe John can adjust to a different internet source and try and come back in. But in the meantime, we'll go us. I put 3 lineups in myself, just following what the RotoGrinders projections have and Vanek's article. And one of them is, I basically just did game stacks. I have Fields Braxton. I have Klubnik with, who did I pair Klubnik with? Kevin Jennings. And then Levitt and Beck together. So that's kind of how I ran things in my lineup.
Yeah, I mean, game stacking on a shorter slate is certainly viable. Fields is a good cheap option, as John was kind of mentioning while he was going in and out there. But the Louisiana offense, so they have the highest implied team total on the slate. Louisiana does. It says ULL because their abbreviation used to be Louisiana Lafayette. So they dropped the Lafayette and they're just Louisiana now. But that's what ULL means for those of you who might not be familiar. But their whole offense is cheap and they're projected for 31 points. So, yeah, feel free to go with, I mean, I think you can play multiple Louisiana guys on the same roster, like even quarterback, running back together or something like that. So Fields is your cheap guy. Brett Gabbert is the other guy that's a starter. That's 6K. I am really not going there today. Don't really trust the Miami passing game. There's not a huge ceiling there for Gabbert. So I am not touching him. You want to just take over the host role there, TJ?
Might as well. Let's pivot over to running back. Scatabo is honestly not as chalky as I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be higher owned. I got him in all three of my lineups. To me, he's the number one priority on the slate.
Yeah, I mean, Scatabo is, we've seen him have huge games all year long. And the circumstances around it now with Arizona State, you've got this is a team where we know that we knew where the touches were going to go. They were going to go to Scatabo. They were going to go to Jordan Tyson as their clear number one wide receiver. Problem is now you've got Tyson out for the year because they left him in far too long last week in a blowout game against Arizona. Now they've lost him for the rest of the season. And so you don't have your number one wide receiver. So Scatabo is going to get 25 carries in this game, and he's capable of catching the ball. He has 35 receptions, 6 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. I mean, he's the cash game lock of the day. There is value all over the place at wide receiver today. So, you're talking, well, how can I fit quarterback and then Scatabo into a lineup? You can. It's not as hard as you think. I have one lineup that is full of 3K receivers and really doesn't project all that poorly compared to spending up at wide receiver. So Scatabo, definitely the priority. If I'm building like 10 lineups, he's going to be in at least half. Like we have his projected ownership at 38. I'm going to be at least at 50. I usually don't go all in on anybody just because you never know with injuries and whatnot. But if you are the type of person that goes all in on a player, he would probably be the one guy that you could lock in today. I'll probably be 50 to 60% in my lineups. And then the lineups where I don't have him, I'm going to get somebody in the next range. John mentioned earlier that Phil Maffa has been struggling. Clemson has had some tough run defense matchups the last few weeks. So I think he'll get back on track today. I'm fine with Maffa, especially if you're not playing Klubnik. I'm fine with Brashard Smith on the other side of that game. Stacking up various aspects of LSU or SMU and Clemson, I think makes a lot of sense. If you think SMU plays with a lead, go with Smith, go with Klubnik. If you think Clemson plays with a lead, go with Jennings, go with Maffa. And then, hopefully you get the correlation of the potential game flow there. There's receivers you can stack with each quarterback as well. So I like Smith. I like Maffa. I'm lower on Jordan James today, lower on Singleton. I just think the defenses in that game will take over. So if I'm paying up for running back today, it's definitely Scatabo. And then I'm overweight on Smith and Maffa as well.
John, he's back. It looks like he's not freezing. Who do you like at running back?
Thank you, gentlemen. I apologize. I switched. We have multiple wireless. I switched to the children's one. No one's up, so I think I should be okay. Sorry about that, everyone.
It seems a lot more smooth right now. So
yeah, so let's cross our fingers. I love Scatabo. I think the only question is the percentage of ownership, but in cash games, I'm going to swallow it. I do think that Jordan James has now become GPP viable because Justin, I don't like him either. I don't have him in cash. However, our ownership, if you look at like the big four, he's by far got the lowest ownership. And I already mentioned I don't like Dylan Gabriel a lot in this game. So if I'm going to pass on Dylan Gabriel, Jordan James becomes GPP viable for me. I love Brashard Smith, but I'm not going to have Smith and Jennings. I just think the choice is between one or the other for me, and I end up choosing Jennings over Smith. Plus, we have him at a very high ownership, almost 40% there. So I do like Scatterbo without question. And Maffa, I just don't understand. I don't know if there's an injury. I've seen all these Clemson games. He's just disappeared. So I'm completely off of him, my friend.
Yeah, I'm okay with Maffa. I just, South Carolina's defense is elite. They've had some tough, weird game flow type of games, Clemson. And so I've got a little bit of Maffa today. It does make me a little bit nervous, but hopefully this is the week where they go back to their workhorse, but certainly not a must by any means. All right, so if we go down from there, we've got the Texas guys. I never know what to do with them. Wisner has kind of become the preferred play, but do I want to play Wisner at 30+% ownership against Georgia? I don't think so. Tyus for Ohio. I mean, I don't feel great about this next range. So I'm probably not playing anybody really in the 5 and 6K range below Maffa until we just get to the super cheap guys.
I like Wisner, but I do think for GPP, I'm completely out on him at that high ownership. The workload that he's gotten, Justice, over the last 2 games is crazy. Like I had a double take of the last couple of games. I'm like, did he really do that well? And then I looked at it. I'm like, wow, he had 33 and 26 carries, 4 combined receptions. Now he's only reached the end zone once. It is a difficult matchup in perception. But if you look deeper at the Georgia run game or defense, Justin, they haven't been very good. So I do like Wisner in this game if you want, but not for GPP. It's just too high ownership and too much risk because Georgia might play better, right? Or the game script goes away from Texas. But I was amazed at how well Wisner's played. Now, that also due to Jaden Blue has been limited. I've read that Jaden Blue might not be back, but one thing we know over Sarkisian, the coach, once he finds his guy, Justin, he rides his guy. So I do think the volume will be there for Wisner. I don't think he'll be as efficient as he was in the last 2 games. And I agree with the others. I don't like Tyus at all. Parker Navarro steals too many goal line carries.
How would your 2 takes on Wisner adjust if Jaden Blue doesn't play? Does that all of a sudden change to even in GPPs? I don't care about the chalk. I'm playing him.
I don't think I would in the chalk because they could go to the air, but then he catches a 40% chalk. I just can't do 40% in GPP against Georgia.
Yeah, I'm probably out. I mean, I wouldn't argue against it as hard, but I'm probably out myself. What time that game is? It's also a tricky spot because that's like it's not the first game, but it's not the last game. It's like right in the middle of the slate. So I would probably pass because there's still enough games to go that the ownership would still be high. Like maybe if it's like 5 minutes before kickoff and we don't think that people are going to adjust, then maybe you make that move and put him in there. But if it breaks, an hour or 2 before kickoff, I'm probably still out. And that's part of what makes these all day slates too a little bit more interesting is if news breaks, it's different adjusting when the slate goes all day. But I think Blue's going to play. It would just be a matter of how much. So. All right, let's talk about the cheaper guys. 3 of them that I think make sense to talk about. Louisiana, Marshall's defense has been poor against the run all year. Bill Davis has been their number 1 guy, but Zylan Perry came out of basically nowhere and ran for like 160 yards and a couple scores last week. And then Mosey for Miami is the other kind of cheap guy that's getting some buzz today. But really interested with how you plan to handle the Louisiana guys with both Bill Davis and Zylan Perry projecting for about 30% ownership today.
As everyone knows, I do 3 cash game lineups. And in 2 of the 3, I actually have doubled down on Davis and Mosey. I do like those 2 players. Mosley has been very interesting. If you haven't watched Miami of Ohio, the Redhawks, Mosley is one of the most frequently. He has more carries for less touchdowns. That's how I should put it, man. He has the ball so much, and he went for such a long time without scoring a touchdown. Now he has in 2 of the last 3 weeks. He is an uber efficient player. I think he's averaging over 6 yards per carry. Let me make sure on this. What is his season? Actually, 6.6 yards per carry. The problem with Mosey is he doesn't catch the ball. He only has 4 receptions for the season. So we really need the touchdown, but I do like him in this matchup. That's why we get a very nice value on him at 4,500, because he doesn't have the pass catching upside, but he does give you a nice pairing with Scatterbo. The player that I do like Bill Davis, the running back at Louisiana for the Raging Cajuns. But you're right. Last week, we got a little X factor with Zillin Perry in there, right? You're like, wait a second. How did Perry pop out of nowheres? But I'll go within a championship game. I'm going to assume that the coaching staff will go with Davis. If Perry pops off a long run, it could happen. Now, in my third lineup, I did put Perry just in case, right? And he's a little bit cheaper. So I can't say but he's in only one of my 3 lineups. I like the other 2 a lot.
Yeah, I've got right now, I've got 5 lineups. I've got Davis in 2 and Perry in 1. And then I've got some Mosey as well. It just helps your lineup work, particularly if you are trying to get Scatterbo in there.
That's the key.
All right, let's move to a wide receiver / tight end. Just to make sure I include Tyler Warren, my nemesis all year, in that discussion. So justifiably has become the highest priced guy at the position, which gives me another reason to say, hey, I'm not playing Tyler Warren at that price, but against Oregon. But he will probably, do his thing as usual. We know that the Iowa State pass catchers, that the targets are going to be there for Higgins. They're going to be there for Noel. You've got Tez Johnson. You've got Coleman Owen. And then, Williams for Clemson, who you mentioned Maffa has kind of disappeared. Well, Williams has emerged as the clear wide receiver 1 there for Clemson over the course of the second half of the season. So you're probably not going to have the salary to spend up for like all of your wide receiver picks unless you're foregoing Scatterbo, which I am not doing. But you can probably get 1. So if you had to prioritize a couple of these guys here above 6K, who do you like the best?
My preferred one, and I have him in 2 of my 3 lineups, is Antonio Williams. I do think that Williams has become kind of the star of this Clemson offense. It has coincided with the downfall of Phil Maffa, but I've watched a lot of Clemson, and they moved Antonio Williams into the slot. He's a third-year player who popped as a freshman, and he's been healthy this whole year. He wasn't healthy last year. By moving him inside, he has more advantageous matchups, and the targets are just there. I'm going to say this. Justin and I have not been Tyler Warren. I played him last week. I had to finally give in. I put him in a lineup. I will say this, and hey, I'm GPP. I'm going to go for the all or nothing. I have a lineup with Warren, and I came back with Jordan James and Dylan Gabriel because of low ownership. Hey, I might finish first or last, but that's what I'm going for in GPP because we have lower ownership expected on Warren, and I get low ownership on Gabriel and Jones, the running back of Oregon. I think it's interesting because Jones is a pass catcher. But, yes, that's the only way I'm playing Warren. I can't do that price in cash games.
All right. Yeah, I agree. Going down the list a little bit more, like we start to get into value territory in a hurry. Like there's not a whole lot in the 5Ks, maybe Javon Tracy. But again, I'm not playing the Miami of Ohio passing attack all that much. And if I do, I'll just go a little bit cheaper and get the first of the many value guys in Reggie Virgil, who's a little bit cheaper at 4,800. Lance Legendre, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. It sure looks French. So Legendre, bring in TJ to pronounce the name properly. But in any case, at 4,500, I mentioned all the ULL guys are cheap. So he would be a guy that's going to pop as a value. Who else are you kind of looking at in the mid-range before we get to the 3K guys?
Well, I completely agree with you on Lance, the University of Louisiana Lafayette pass catcher. He was a quarterback. He is transferred over to wide receiver / tight end. He's been very, very good this year for ULL. I like him very much. I like West. I don't know if you want to go. I guess he's a little bit lower. I guess we want to stay in that 4K range. So that's my fault there. Reggie Virgil, I completely agree with you at Miami of Ohio. I think he scored in the last 5 games. Like, he's been really productive. Let me see. We up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Does he go back? 6, 7. So he has scored a touchdown in the last 7 games. He's very efficient. His yards per catch, let me see here, are the 20.2. So we're not going to get peppered with, maybe 12 targets, but man, he is so efficient with like 7 to 8 targets. He'll get 4 or 5 receptions out of it, and he'll go between 70 and 100 yards. I love Reggie Virgil, Miami of the Redhawks.
Yeah, him and Legendre, clearly the plays in the 4K range there. And then there's a couple guys right at 4,000. Gunnar Helm, the tight end for Texas. Daniels, the big play threat for SMU. I mean, you can certainly pair him with Jennings if you want. He's kind of more of a boomer bust guy. Interested in your take as more of a cash game build. Like, is Daniels a cash game guy for you?
He is. I have a cash game lineup with Kevin Jennings and with Daniels. I do think, hey, all we got to do is hit that one big play. He is a little bit up and down, but he's been consistent over the last 4 or 5 weeks. The one player that I like for GPP that we have not discussed, Matthew Golden. Man, we have real low ownership projected on him. He's only 4.1K, and if you've been watching Texas, if you want to pivot away from Wisner and you're looking to say, let's say Georgia jumps out early, Matthew Golden, I love him. He's only 4.1. And I know people like Isaiah Bond, but I'm playing Matthew Golden now. He's a little touchdown dependent, right? But man, when he scores those touchdowns for you, I like Matthew Golden at that price.
Yeah, I certainly think that he's viable as well. And then we kind of get into the complete punt range at wide receiver. There are quite a few of them. Like Oregon, you've got Evan Stewart. You've got Ferguson, who's kind of come on the second half of the season. Clemson, you have Moore. You have Wesco, who you just kind of hinted at there a bit ago. Marshall's wide receivers are relatively affordable. You've got Montgomery at 3,400 projecting for like 9-10 points, like a whole lot of guys that project for around 10 points in this range. Wesco is probably the option I think that most people are going to look at. I think Ferguson is interesting for GPPs, given that he's kind of come on the second half of the year. Who are you looking at as far as bottom of the barrel guys?
You had mentioned it earlier. I would have probably played Sam Levitt. However, they lost Jordan Tyson. I don't know if he's technically an All-American, but he sure played at the All-American wide receiver. He had such a good season. Why do I mention that? Xavier Guillory is probably going to lead the other than Scatterbo. We know Scatterbo is going to get his touches in the passing game and in the running game. But if I have to bet on a wide receiver for the Sun Devils in this game, Xavier Guillory is only 3.2. He's not going to be Jordan Tyson. I could only hope. But he's a very interesting play. I actually have him in lineups with Scatterbo. I'm okay with it because the salary savings is so limited. Even with Jordan Tyson the last 2 weeks, he has scored 12 and 13 points. If he can just get his normal targets and maybe he gets 35 to 50% of Jordan Tyson's targets, Justin, I'll bank on that. I like him a lot. I agree with you with Terrence Ferguson. I got absolutely no problem with him whatsoever. And West. Oops. There is value at the Clemson tight end wide receiver position.
Yeah, for sure. That's you can get some punt plays there. The ball's got to go somewhere outside of Williams, and like if you look at the Clemson pass catchers, everyone outside of Williams is 3,500 or less. So yeah, they might spread it around a little bit, but you got Browning, Stool, Wesco, and Moore are the more likely targets in that range for sure. All right, that takes us through the games today. Again, there are only 6. We usually have like 12 on the main slate. There's also no different games on FanDuel. There's not a whole lot of pricing differences on FanDuel as well. You maybe don't need to go quite so punt level E with your picks on FanDuel, but otherwise the salary building is pretty similar between the two sites today. All right, I'm going to pop open the Discord here. I'm a little bit behind in doing that. Apologies if anybody has asked questions in there. Carolina guy had asked for our favorite quarterback receiver stack on FanDuel. He's usually a FanDuel guy. Again, I don't think it's a whole lot different between the sites really at all today. It's probably Klubnik and Williams in terms of if you're looking for a quarterback and receiver pairing. Maybe Dylan Gabriel and Tez Johnson if you want to get super crazy in a GPP. But who's your favorite pairing, quarterback receiver?
My favorite is for cash games, Klubnik and Antonio Williams. But, it's interesting. If you really want to kind of get a little bit funky, we haven't mentioned Rocco Beck too much. I hinted at him. Rocco Beck and Jaden Higgins, because we have Rocco Beck.
John's freezing one more time for the road. The kids' Wi-Fi ran out too.
I would go Jaden Noel at wide receiver for Iowa State. Noel and Rocco Beck if I want to differentiate.
Yeah, and we know the targets are going to go there. I like that call as well. We know the targets are going to go to Noel and Higgins on that squad. All right, Golf Nut rolling a Navarro Levitt combo on DK. That's certainly contrarian. I don't have as much interest in Levitt today. I don't trust them to throw the ball that much. I just think Scatabo is going to get the ball. So I'm fine with Navarro. I would maybe pivot Levitt to Jennings if that were my lineup, but it's certainly playable by any stretch. All right, reminder before we get out of here, hit that thumbs up button on the YouTube stream. We appreciate that very much, helping us beat those YouTube algorithms. And then a couple reminders here that if you want to check more of us out at RotoGrinders, this is the busiest time of the year on the sports calendar, so perfect time to sign up for RG Combo. For a limited time, you can get your first month of Combo for just $79.99, which is $5 more than just NBA by itself. So great value there around the holidays. And you have also probably heard us talk on other shows if you've watched about Splash Sports. That's a site that we have worked with for a while now. So super cool. Check that out. If you haven't signed up for Splash Sports yet, now is the time. You can use promo code ROTO10, and when you play $100 in Quick Picks, you'll get another $50 on top of that. So TJ can drop the link for Splash Sports as well. And with that, I think we're pretty much through. We don't have any other lingering questions. And John, as always, been great working with you all year. I don't know what we're going to do as far as bowl season and playoffs go. We don't know what the sites are going to release for slates and stuff. So obviously, the first couple weeks of the playoffs, there's 4 games, I believe. So maybe we try to put something together on the fly. But as of now, this is the last official show. So if we don't do another one, John, as always, been great working with you.
Oh, Justin, it's been a pleasure. I can't thank you enough. You've helped me through. This is only my second year. It's great to work with like a professional like yourself.
His internet heard me calling a professional and decided to freeze again. No compliments at the end of the show today. You're good now. All right. Well, for that, we'll go ahead and call it a year for the regular season. Thanks for joining us all year. We greatly appreciate it. Thanks to TJ for producing behind the scenes for us. And, of course, thanks to John for joining me. Thanks for another great season, everybody. And we'll catch you maybe at some point during bowl season, but otherwise, hopefully be back here for next fall. So for John, for TJ, I'm Justin. Take care, everybody. We'll see you later.